Well, hey, Dan, it's good to be talking to you again. You and I are pretty much the same kind of person when it comes to doing all kinds of things, never just one thing at a time. It's more fun doing at least a handful of things at a time. And that's one of the reasons why we do interviews here so often. I know that you are once again putting together a Philip K. Dick Film Festival. We can talk a little bit about that, but you're also doing something else. And why don't you begin by telling our listeners and viewers what you're up to?
Okay, yes, I'm well, basically my day job, we would say my day job is to be uh, a facilitator, counselor, for lack of a better term, helping people achieve their potential. Because I think we all have untapped potentials, which are often go unfulfilled. So my goal is to learn the technologies that will help us tap into those God-given potentials. I mean, what gifts we all have, and I think once we find out what our gifts are, everything is much easier because at least we know, okay, this is our strength, this is our power, this is how we can better improve the world. There are too many people in the world that are involved in sad jobs and activities that are not really happy, and unfortunately that's my goal. My goal, fortunately, is to try to elevate that, to at least get the word out and help people learn about it. So I put together something called the Mind Revolution. And what the Mind Revolution is I would say it's a program that it's a science-based program that uses the latest technologies to basically support the a lot of the wisdom that has been distilled over the last couple of decades regarding personal development and growth. Um, Too often I come across people who say, well, that's just someone just made that up, or this can't be possibly be true. Where's the science? Well, now we got science. And that's the beautiful thing about it. Not only does the science show that it's possible, the science shows more than what's possible. And for instance, in terms of those who practice meditation, uh, everybody knows meditation is good for you. Everybody, but how do you quantify it, right? Well, now, thanks to MRI scans, you can actually take an MRI of someone's brain before or after the meditation. And what studies have shown, after 6 weeks, there is a significant reduction in the size of the amygdala. That's the part of the brainstem that's associated with memory. I'm sorry, with emotional charging. And storage. So by reducing that, people can now are less reactive to events, are much more centered and calm. I can go on with other ways. For instance, those who suffer from schizophrenia have been shown to have an unusually large parahippocampus gyrus. This is one part of the brainstem that's larger than usual. So the question is, it begs the question, what can we do to help people with certain specific disorders? What practices where they can slowly show an improvement? And that's the beautiful thing about what the science is, that it's showing for the first time hardcore evidence-based criteria and methodologies that will support our thinking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad to hear that you are using science and technology to help human beings, because as I'm sure you well know, all too often, especially at least in the academic world, when people are talking about new technology, it's always about, well, this is something we have to be careful about. This is something we have to be concerned about. It's going to change our way of life. It might even be as bad as the Terminator and kill us. And you are exploring another side to this. And in particular, if I'm understanding you correctly, is what you're talking about something that is part of this AI revolution that we're hearing so much about, where the reason that we're able to map the brain so clearly and see what's going on in there? I know that's existed for a while, but is it enhanced by these new AI programs?
Well, what the brain scanning technologies have certainly helped in mapping out brain function real time. So what someone is going through or is thinking, that is absolutely true. Now, the AI revolution is a little bit different. And this is again goes hand in hand with the mind revolution. Uh, think of linear processing as being most linear processing, of which AI is just a step above, more as a left brain phenomenon. Um, the left brain is associated with list making, cataloging, grouping, and it's certainly obsessed with control. Now, a lot of the AI I see happening, and first of all, the AI is programmed primarily by technology wizards who are tend to be by nature very left brain. Unfortunately, the right brain, which is less quantitative and more qualitative, gets left out of the picture. So what we're offering is actually a balance, I would say, a balancing tool against this AI out of control technology.
Yeah, I have to say, Marshall McLuhan, especially in maybe the last 5, 10 years of his life, used to go around every time he gave a lecture with a big chart that showed what the left brain was responsible for creating and coordinating, and what the right brain was responsible for. And he thought that was very, very significant. I mean, there've even been some people who've suggested that in effect, although we feel as if we have unified personalities, which we do, but in a way, it's a cooperation of two somewhat distinct ways of addressing the world, moving through the world, thinking about things. Is
And
that
that's
the case?
correct. Absolutely. And it's not so much that the left brain is masculine, the right brain is feminine, and that has been pretty much put in the back burner. But the way you attend to reality, that's a great way of putting it. It's very different.
Okay.
The left brain attends to reality, but it's more detail based. It's more future and past based. In fact, one of the things that one of the quoted it's a Nobel Prize winner won the Nobel Prize with involving split brain experiments. Name is Dr. Michael Gazzaniga. He actually has found an area of the left brain that's associated with storytelling, associated with the stories that we tell ourselves about what's possible. The left brain makes up stuff, you get 4 or 5 data points and it connects them all and it confabulates. The right brain tends to be very literal, and it tends to actually be more accurate regarding the representation of reality than the left brain, which tends to make up stories. And this has been shown time and time again, using split brain experiments. So what I tell people is, like, your beliefs, your idea of who you are, what's possible, that's more right left brain thinking. The right, and this is again being shown now scientifically, whereas the right brain is more present based. It's more about timeless dimension. It's more about big picture. It deals with forms and shapes and textures, whereas the left brain is associated with numbers, and more quantitative in nature. Spiritual experiences. Now that we can actually look at the MRI of people having either undergoing deep meditation or having spiritual experiences, the right brain lights up. More, it's almost like a Christmas tree. So what we're seeing is, like, they both need to complement each other. It's not like one is bad and the other one is good. No, both of them are important. And how we especially in this day and age where there's so much left brain consciousness running the show. And AI, in my book, is just an extension of that. How do we balance it out with right brain practices, meditation, chanting, drumming, daydreaming, guided imagery? Those are very important. That's how we can because the world is most people agree that the world seems to be seriously out of balance. And how do you balance it? It's the most important question. Not necessarily AI is bad, we got to get rid of the AI. No, we gotta definitely, AI is definitely happening, but when that happens, we need to have a counterbalance. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
the right brain will be just again discarded. And people who have, for instance, who suffer from depression, or let me talk about clinically depressed, tend to have very little right brain activity, tend to exhibit very little right brain activity. In fact, the writer, his name is Ian McGilchrist, has conjectured that those who that schizophrenics are excessively using their left brain. They're ruminating, a lot of rumination, a lot of thought processing. That's very much left brain processing. So we need a counterbalance, and we have it in front of us. It's just got to put it together in a way that everybody can appreciate and see that it's a science-based. It's no longer someone's opinion. We can back it up now with real-time imaging of what's happening inside our heads.
Yeah, let me
So
just ask you a question about that
sure,
inside our heads, because I've been thinking about this for a while anyway,
yeah.
and it seems that your work is in a very important way relevant to this. Everybody wants to know what's going on inside other people's heads. One of the reasons is that human beings tend to lie, they tend to exaggerate.
Right.
You know, if someone says, I love you, do they really mean it? If somebody tells you anything, you know, and what they're talking about is not something that's right in front of both of you, you are totally dependent on that person telling you the truth. So, in terms of what you're talking about being able to see through MRIs, you know, what is going on inside a person's skull. And let's just imagine, because as you know, I also write science fiction. It's a little bit into the future, wouldn't take that much, that I have a device on me, you know, I can carry it in my pocket like a smartphone. And when I click it on, I can sort of quietly glance at it and see the MRIs that are going on inside the brain of the person that I'm talking to. Here's my question. Would it be possible for me to see the stories that that person is telling me? And could I see the difference between a truth and a lie?
Well, I have a surprise for you. Already we have the technology to see inside people's brains. The images that people make inside their brains, we can reproduce it externally through our and in fact, this is how sci-fi and science and all works coming together. It turns out that a former Philip K. Dick alumnus, his name is Chris Garitano, uh, made a documentary called Strange World, which I believe you can still get it in the Travel Channel. And I think in one of those episodes, he goes and actually goes into a clinic where he has himself, connected through various electrodes, and and he starts thinking about something, an object. It's called reconstructed neural imagery. And sure enough, he starts thinking about that object. What shows in front of him, this machine is picking up his evoke electric potentials, gets transcribed, bang, it's already there. And in a rough form. But you can say, oh, this is, and when I first saw this is shocking. It's not like this is no longer sci-fi. This is happening right now. It might be a while before we can just connect someone, plug it in and get their image in front of me, but who knows? Already the technology in to read other people's thoughts. I mean, it has to be a focused thought, specific thought. And let's say, think of a church or a building or something very specific, and then it gets transcribed by the machine. Obviously, people usually don't think like that. They have tons of images and sounds, so the machine would have a hard time representing that on paper. It would probably be up internally, but you could definitely do it now. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is not too far future. We'll definitely be able to tell if someone is lying or not.
I love it. Of course, Philip K. Dick's Minority Report, it's not quite that, but it's basically, a speculation of about someday in the future, we might be able to tell that someone is going to commit a crime. Not because
Exactly.
they told us, but we can sort of scan their brains and then maybe do something about it. And
Right.
go ahead.
Profiling, yeah, precogs. Already there is some of that going on in Florida and other states. There is a profiling. They're using AI to profile what are the chances that a specific person will commit a crime with a specific history at such a location. And then what they'll do is they'll actually go ahead and they won't arrest them, but I think they'll keep an eye. They'll if the chances are very high, they'll actually might just arrest them. So yeah, now in PKD he incorporated precogs, which obviously, as far as I know, is not being used actively in military intelligence, but we're very close to we're very close. That's why the idea of living in a PKD universe is very well. We might have stepped into it.
We're already in it to some extent.
We're already in it.
Yeah.
So I think that the idea of science and science fiction is becoming more and more, they're just blurring. I mean, right, especially cutting edge science, it's at the same almost at the adjacent to science fiction that PKD talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. The idea, though, if you think about it, of arresting someone, it's one thing to keep an eye on someone or to follow them, keep them under surveillance. But the idea of arresting someone because they might commit a crime, that really is pretty extreme. That in itself is almost on the road to fascism, right?
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
that's the idea, right? I mean that's what PKD warned us about, the abuse of technology, and and without necessarily advocating for the elimination. It's like it's gonna get, technology is moving so fast right now, and I wouldn't be surprised in 5 or 6 years things will be working. At least AI will be very much an integral part of everything we do, and that's the implications of that are could be catastrophic unless we find breaks or ways to correct it. So that's what we need, a counterbalance, and we need to deal the human being. The human being is not just standing reserves. It's human being is more than that. And unfortunately, the focus too much in recent years is beyond the quantitative aspect of humanity rather than qualitative. But they're both important. And so in order to prevent something that's falling off the cliff, so to speak, I think we need to really develop simultaneously technologies or practices, human-based practices that kind of retain our humanity, retain our sense of wholeness.
So in the Mind Revolution, is that what's called? That's an event that you're organizing, is that right?
Yeah, so the event is organized, and there are 3 parts to the Mind Revolution. The first is that the theater of the mind. I think I spoke briefly about that the last time, that we represent this is more a left brain phenomenon. The theater of the mind is a way of representing our fears and concerns visually, and by accessing the images that we project on this kind of mental screen, we can gain control of those images and help us deal with fears and concerns. Part 2 is more right brain. It's called the family inside us. Is that what is more and more in the therapeutic environment? There's a recognition that we don't have one self. In fact, in Buddhism, this idea we have processes. There's no one unified self. What makes up the self is a series of selves that are very transient in nature. Like at one point you might feel like you're a 10-year-old. At one point you'll feel like this. So we have these different parts that are often, most of the time they're kind of working with each other, but when we see depression or sadness or clinical or psychopathy, then multiple personality disorder, then at that point we have one part that is just running the show and the other parts are ignored. The idea is to recognize that we have I refer maybe intelligences, and you have the central tree, which is us, the you, but then we have these roots, these branches. And to recognize that inside us, we have that. It's very important because we need to have that communication ongoing in ourselves. So a lot of people that don't know this are under the assumption that once you reach a certain age, that's it, you're an adult of that age. And everybody who is controlling them knows that's not true.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just reading the other day this interesting statistic. Doesn't have anything to do explicitly with the mind, but it's related really to what you're saying, that there are more bacteria inside us, not that are making us sick, but that are helping us live, digest our food,
Yeah.
build up our immunity, all kinds of things. There literally are more bacteria in every human being system than there are cells from our body. And so just think about that. Really, we are an organism that is constructed in a synergistic way, that is a mutually cooperative way, in this case, between us and between bacteria. We don't live in isolation. And it strikes me that really what you're saying, that's also true of our mentalities. And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We live in a city in a nested relationship with these aspects of ourselves. Like many times, what made me say that? What made me do that? Self-sabotage. Well, guess what? We tend to treat those parts that sabotage us as bad, or I don't know what it is, but I don't want it. Well, instead of embracing it, because there is wisdom, these parts are trying to do the best they can, but with what they have. And only by embracing it can you and understand what this part is doing for you in a positive way, can you begin to develop a positive relationship or wholesome relationship rather than rejecting the part. And this the binary parts, like this is a bad part, like I don't know, for example, smoking or drinking, these kind of things. What makes you want to? I don't know. I lost control. I mean, well, guess what? That there's a part of you that is a part of the person that is using that behavior to communicate something that is not being objectively addressed by the mind. Perhaps that person, instead of smoking, they could take perhaps what they really need is a moment of meditation, a moment of break, call their friends. But instead, what they're doing, they're grabbing a smoke. And that applies to so much of what we do, that it's, so yeah, we definitely, and it kind of fits nicely with the whole idea of the Buddhist idea that there's no self, there's a series of processes that makes us believe there is one self, but the idea of a unitary self may not be necessarily. And when you think about it, when you start thinking along those lines, begin to appreciate the great mysteries of all the religions, whether it be Hinduism or Christianity or Judaism, we have this kind of like multiple personalities in one person, but at the same time, there are many. Well, but guess what? We have that inside. That's the funny thing about it, is that the minute you recognize we have that inside of us, all the great mysteries of these religions make sense. Let's say whether in the case of the Hinduism, you have Brahma, you have Vishnu, you have and you have Shiva. Christianity, God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. You have these different groups, and because the self is one and yet many, and that's the mystery. The minute we understand that mystery, and all the great scientists, by the way, understood that. They talked about that. They felt there was no conflict between the spiritual world and the science world. There was none. But it's only in the last couple 100 years that we really many, not everyone, but many said, no, this is just the woo-woo stuff. And then start focusing on strictly quantitative assessment of our humanity. And that's where we're heading very closer to the abyss. We need to really recognize we're not just flesh and bones. We're not
No,
just,
that's right.
and even the quantum world, quantum physics talks about that. The fact that we're just, we're more than that. They're referred to as the field, the quantum field, and so on. So it can all be brought together in a way that makes sense, which is what everybody's trying to make sense of this world.
Yeah, well, as you probably know, quantum mechanics, or at least some interpretations of it, hypothesize that even just thinking about something, thinking about something in the real world in some way changes that particle's, or even bigger than a particle's, very existence, which, if you think about it, is a pretty revolutionary topic right there. That's the
Oh,
sort of,
yeah.
mental power over matter.
Oh, absolutely. Quantum mechanics is so the way physicists deal with it is they don't try to think about the philosophical implications. They'll just approach quantum mechanics as a statistical tool. Again, quantitative. But with quantum mechanics, okay, Erwin Schrödinger was one of the developers of quantum mechanics. He was a Vedantist. Vedanta, for those who are not familiar, is like one aspect of Hinduism that believes there is one self, a unitary. He believed that we all live in a singularity of one. These are all manifestations of the one. Max Planck, who was a Christian, believed that consciousness is the underlying foundation of all reality. So we're seeing that, and now the new scientists today, there are some who are actually still running with that idea, and they're trying to make sense of this. But it's a spectral universe we live in, and that's the thing Philip K. Dick kind of talks about it. That's the amazing quality of his work, and that's why, for me, I feel that it's just another flip side of the coin,
Yeah, absolutely. So, about the mind revolution, I just want to tell our viewers and listeners, we'll have the URL if anyone wants to find out more about it. This is taking place in New York City in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, the mind. So for those who are, you might include, it's just the mindrevolution.com.
Okay, the mind
That's
revolution.com.
the mind revolution. I'm sorry, the mind revolution experience.com.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Joe Rogan experience is the mind revolution experience.com.
All right,
It
good.
is an experience, not just facts and figures, but it is the whole goal of the workshop is to give people. I'm not just going to show slides or videos, but do group exercises where people begin to understand there's a lot more going on in their mind than they're giving themselves credit for.
Okay, and what are the dates for that?
It's going to take place Thursday, March 14th, at the Producers Club. That's at 7 to 9, and the Producers Club is located on 358 West 44th Street.
All right, great. And again, I'll put that also in the show notes, and I'll put some words up here on the screen so people will see that. Now, it looks to me like you are talking from right now from a very interesting place. Is that the Museum of the Moving Image, or is
Oh,
that
no,
something?
I'm actually talking from I'm doing some work at Gregory's coffee shop.
Okay, well, it's a nice looking coffee shop.
It's a nicely lit. I figured this was probably they have decent internet, and I've
Okay.
been also working, as you know, on the festival for the following month.
Right. So, right. So that I had that actually, if there was an MRI, you probably, and you were looking at it with my brain, you might have been able to figure that out. I was
Right.
I was actually thinking about the Museum of the Moving Image because in April, right, you're going to be you've organized it already. You'll be hosting another Philip K. Dick film festival in New York, right?
At the Museum of the Moving Image, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good.
it will be uh This is our 11th year focusing on the films and the themes of films that are inspired by the works of Philip K. Dick, which, what does it mean to be human? What is the nature of reality? Where are we going? Um, and also a good number of films dealing with a good number dealing with PTSD, trauma, sadness. And that's something thing I wanted to mention is that there's still a lot of sadness going on in the world after COVID, a lot of trauma. And my concern is people are not even aware that they're still in the denial phase of the grieving process. They're acting up, maybe anger or at first I thought maybe just me, I'm just thinking about it, but then I've seen three things. First, I saw a huge number of shorts dealing with grief, sadness, PTSD, healing. I said, wow. And then I also saw read two articles, how you see that in the music world today. There's a lot of talk. A lot of the new pop rock, they're talking about PTSD, for instance. They talk about sadness, and also in the film world too. So there is definitely something that is being addressed, and it's also often being said that art is really like it's at the front line of what we're experiencing. So art is telling us that the sadness has to be dealt with, or we need to deal with it one way or another. And
Yeah, what Marshall McLuhan, again, one of his favorite observations was that artists are the antennae of our
exactly.
species. Yeah, which is
And
certainly
and
true.
which certainly, I mean, of all places in science fiction, that's why I keep saying that science fiction, especially our kind of science fiction, PKD, it's really about our humanity, how as humans we're dealing with what's going on. And science fiction is just a medium. Like back in the 50s, you had, a lot of UFO invasion films that were the communist threat. There was the interpretation. So now we have something else that people are very concerned about. Things that have happened or might happen. So I say always science fiction is a sneak preview into the future. It's the science of tomorrow becoming today.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's why, as I often say, my critics of my science fiction sometimes say, it's too serious. It's it reads like philosophy. I take that as a compliment, but people, when they read my nonfiction, sometimes critics say, "Hey, that's science fiction." But I take that as a compliment also, because yeah, if you're writing about the future, even if it's in a nonfiction context, there has to be some kind of science fictional element in there. By the way, I just want to say I agree with you completely that we're still suffering from the aftermath of COVID. The way I first noticed it is, I let's face it, you live in the New York area, people are always cutting you off. They're driving too fast and stuff. So that in itself is nothing new. But I began to notice about a year or two ago that drivers were getting even more aggressive. I mean,
Yeah.
you're driving down the Sprain. I live in White Plains, so I'm driving down, to the Bronx. I teach at Fordham University. And just about every time I drive down there are 4 or 5 different cars that come speeding like 95 miles an hour, cutting everybody off, weaving in and out. I don't know where the police are. Somehow they never see them. But I began to think, you know what? This was not quite happening with such intensity before COVID. And I think you're right on to something. I think people are still in grief. Not only that, I think if you've been unfortunate enough to have had COVID, you might be suffering from some kind of long-term mental,
Absolutely.
emotional problem.
There is some I've also noticed with some people that had COVID they have attention issues, and there's been some speculation that the spike protein, which is created either through COVID or through the vaccine, uh, crosses the blood-brain barrier and it latches itself. Now, this is by an MD PhD from Germany, into a part of the hippocampus, which is the part of the brainstem or brain that's associated with long-term memory. What that does, according to this professor, this doctor, is that it prevents the addition of new memories, of new narratives. So essentially what long-term processing allows when we is a kind of a perspective of something. You can say it's far away, it's not dangerous anymore. But because according to him, the spike protein in some people, it impacted the hippocampus, it might also prevent them from healing, so to speak, from getting better emotionally. And you know, it kind of makes sense. I mean, it has impacted a lot of people in different ways. And as a rule, I would say it's very. But the good thing about it is there's certain things you can take that will help you heal if that's the issue. So that's the silver lining. It's just like but people have to recognize this is something that kind of a traumatic incident, and okay, COVID's over, but guess what? The trauma is still ongoing because people are still running these scenarios in their mind, and that's the whole point of the mind revolution, is to really help people understand that there is that we really need to start taking more control of our minds, of the movies we run in our minds. I work with veterans who had basic PTSD, and after a couple of techniques, they feel much better. And not that there's no one technique that works for everyone, but I see that there's a over reliance on big pharma or any kind of medication. It may not necessarily be the way to go for some people.
Yeah,
We
well,
have
it's great that there are people like you who are looking into this and doing this, because I think by and large, conventional doctors, and they operate on what they learned in medical
yeah,
school, what they learned through their years of practice. It's very valuable.
the
But you're
one
talking,
term I want to leave you with is neuroplasticity. Now that's being people are aware of that. Okay, there when someone has a stroke with proper rehabilitation, the brain can then adapt. But what I'm also saying is neuroplasticity could just mean if you want to have better memory, you got to start using it. Start, force to remember things. And, at the beginning may be tough, but over time, just a simple act of recollecting. What was the name of the book? What was the name of the author? And just don't give up. Just go for it. And eventually you will learn that the brain starts to configure in its own mind. For instance, the old days, taxi driver. Remember the old taxi drivers before the day of Google Maps? They relied on memory, and
right?
sure, CAT scans have shown they have a very sizable, extraordinarily sized development in certain parts of their brain associated with visual recall. And people who've learned Sanskrit, who can not only learn it but can recite it. Again, it's been shown they have. So neuroplasticity is not just when someone has a medical problem. It can also be a concept that was, if you want to really either use it or lose it. It's that simple.
Absolutely. I just want to say this also confirms what Freud was getting at when he talked about the unconscious that we all have, that, we have things that are in our mind that we're aware of and are easily recallable. But we've all had the experience of we're trying to remember what was the name of that girl that was, sitting next to me in my sixth grade class, and
Yeah.
I'm talking to a friend of mine. I can't quite remember. Was it Kate? Was it this? And every name that comes up, no, it's not quite that. Oh, okay, it's Karen. But when we know that it's not Kate, that's our unconscious communicating with us. In other words, our unconscious knows what it is. We just need to pull it up into our conscious awareness. And that's part of, I think, neuroplasticity as well. People who have a more flexible outlook, and as you're saying, use it if you don't want to lose it,
Yeah.
who think about things in the past, there's a more easier transition from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind. But speaking of remembering things, tell us when and where the Philip K. Dick Festival, this year's installment of it, is taking place.
Okay, so the Philip K. Dick Festival starts on April 4th. It runs through April 7th. It's gonna be opening night, and you're gonna have Matt Modine, who is the actor, gonna be showing. We actually gonna be screening his film, I Am What You Imagine, along with other amazing shorts. This is all gonna take place at the Museum of the Moving Image, starting April 4th. At 4 p.m., running all the way through Sunday. Simultaneously, we'll also be running programs at the Producers Club in Midtown Manhattan. So those who don't want to go to Queens to see they can also come and see some of our films at the Producers Club simultaneously. So we anticipate anywhere about between 75 and 80 films being shown, and about 50 filmmakers and writers, screenwriters from all over the world will be there. We expect multiple panels, writers, speakers, and networking events, filmmaker receptions, screenings. And we also gonna have a talk on the 25th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project. Remember that? In fact, the producer of the film will be there, and he'll be showcasing a new virtual reality feature that we'll be showing on our through our Oculus headsets. So it promised to be an exciting program, a little bit for everyone. I mean, whether it be into sci-fi or supernatural or documentaries. We have an amazing documentary by it's a short documentary, but it features a woman who has amazing powers, and she's a journalist, and she'll be present. She was actually featured in Time magazine, in the late 90s. So I'm very excited. And I hope, I think people can, and the best way to find out is going to our website, the Philip K. Dick Film Festival.com.
Excellent.
The program will be up by the weekend, hopefully. And I think that it should be an exciting moment. I mean, this is our 11th year. So we're trying to keep the spirit of Philip K. Dick alive more than ever. I think we need his we could definitely use his guidance or his some of his thoughts on the nature of humanity.
So you say up by the weekend. So we're recording this on March 1st to Friday. You mean this weekend or next weekend? Or
Oh, I'm sorry. It was April 4th through the 7th.
Yeah, that's the weekend of the actual festival. You're saying,
Yes.
will the program be up earlier than
Oh,
that?
okay. So the program will be up by today's the 1st, by Monday, March 4th.
Okay. All right, well, good. So again, just so our listeners and viewers, those of you who are devoted fans of this will already know this. Um, I will be putting up the video of this on my YouTube channel by Saturday. That's tomorrow, March 2nd.
Okay.
But for many years, I was doing my podcast light on, light through, whenever I felt like doing it, because there's a certain freedom in that. But I began realizing, look, you can't buck what everyone else is doing in a certain medium forever. And you do attract more listeners when they always know at a certain time
Oh,
of the
yes.
day or week. So what I began doing, in fact, I began doing it, I think, right when we did our last interview this past fall, putting up a new episode every Tuesday shortly after 12 noon New York time. So as far as the acoustic podcast of this is concerned, that will be up this coming Tuesday, which is what today?
And
March.
as for the Mind Revolution, those who are interested, it's up and running already, but they need to RSVP
Okay.
because we probably will sell out. So we don't want people showing up without not getting a seat. So they need to RSVP us. And again, all this available at the mindrevolutionexperience.com.
All right, great. And I don't know whether this will attract people or scare people away, but I'll probably be at the Philip K. Dick Festival at some point babbling away about something or other, being at least somewhat.
Fantastic. Yes, yes, we definitely want you there.
Great, great. Well, listen, it was a pleasure talking to you again, Phil, and I'm sure we'll be Phil. Dan, do you know why I said Phil? One of my main characters is Phil D'Amato, a New York City forensic detective who gets involved in Philip K. Dick in kinds of situations. And I was just talking to somebody else about that. So just to be clear, this is Dan Abella, folks, having nothing to do with Phil D'Amato, except, in a way, they both live in the same
The
universe.
same, similar in the same universe. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. All right. I will talk again soon. Great talking to you this time.
Thanks, Paul, for your time, for your support. And yeah, we'll definitely see you at the festival too.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.